Radio is broadcast on LSL Podcast Channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
From when did this all start happening?
Last year with the Colin Kaepernick.
Oh yeah, but no, Trump's comments were last Friday. A week ago Friday.
Exactly.
My tweet was, the elite media, the establishment media, will contend that this is going to be terrible for Trump, his comments on the NFL. And it's all going to blow up on him, and it's going to be horrible for him, and there's going to be a huge backlash, and all these people. Okay, a week later, Packers are up there standing. Looks like the Steelers aren't going to play their hide in the locker room thing anymore. Other teams are not. They're all standing. 855-40 Laura. It's Friday. I got a lot on my mind this Friday. I've been in New York the last 24 hours. Oh, Pete's coming in. Pete, sit down. Don't you love how I'm talking to people like it's a TV show? I'm talking to people like it's a TV show. Pete, sit down. Like Pete is like a disembodied voice. Where's my coffee? I was up at 3. I can't sleep. Okay, I'm a stream of consciousness, but just stay with me. Okay, just stay with my thread of thought. Okay, the number one point, and you can call in on this, you disagree, agree. Number one point, Trump 8, NFL 0. He has the touchdown and the 2-point conversion against the NFL kneelers. The kneelers, okay? They're all starting to stand now. Wonder why? Why do you think they're standing? Because Trump was wrong? No, because Trump was right. We're all right. Get your butt off the ground. Get your knee off the ground. Stand for your country. Stop whining and moaning when you get millions of dollars to play a game. Sick of it. Fans booed you, and you don't want to hear that every time you went out there. Fans are booing. People burning jerseys. People using jerseys as doormats. You see that?
That's my favorite.
Oh, no, that was great. I love that. They're like, we're looking into whether this is a hate crime. What? That's some barkeeper wants to see... Put it on the ground, walk on it.
Eric Holder's leading that.
Yeah, like you could do it by the way, you could do it to the flag. 100%. You could walk on the flag, no problem. But if you walk on a jersey, oh no. So Trump comes out, just shames these people. Yeah, uses colorful language. Yeah, language I wouldn't have used, the SOB language. So that setting that aside, on the substance, I said last Friday when this thing hit, and it was Saturday morning, I guess when I woke up and I saw what he had said, because I didn't get to see the entire speech, the Alabama speech he gave, that the media would get it wrong again. They said he was over after the John McCain comments. They said Billy Bush changed. They said, well, those are really controversial. This is their national anthem. So, of course, Trump comes out. He calls these people out. The people are totally with him. And then the teams start to do this pushback on Monday night, Sunday. Ratings are going down 8%, 10%. Fans are booing. They were planning, I've seen this on social media. A lot of you also have seen this on social media. Don't go to the games this weekend. Did you see that? That was picking up big steam on social yesterday.
Not only that, but they were burning season tickets.
Season tickets.
We're done.
And people putting I was looking around on Facebook, which I normally don't do, but I did this because I wanted to see where the trending was on Facebook on this. And so many people on Facebook were saying, this weekend, stand with us. And don't go to the game. Show what you really feel about this by not going, hitting them where it hurts, a pocketbook. Now, you do what you want. I don't go to the football games. I'm more of a college person. I like the Redskins. I want the Redskins to win. But I'm not going to be staying up all night watching football anymore. I'm just done with this. They got to completely win me back. And they haven't won me back with the linking arms. I don't want to see you linking arms. I'm not even...
Play football.
It's a game. And Aaron Rodgers, by the way... He comes out, and he's trying to have it both ways. You see, Trump's like black or white. They're not having it both ways. Like, we want black and white standing together, for sure, but the issue is black or white. You love your country. It's not about whether you love Trump. It's not about whether you think all the things he's done is correct. Not whether you think, the Republicans are good or Democrat. Gosh, we've been suffering under 8 years of Obama. Did I ever sit for the Pledge of Allegiance because the Supreme Court went another way in a couple cases that I didn't like? How about 40 years and 50 million babies gone because of Roe versus Wade? 50 million babies are not walking around because of Roe versus Wade, and we all stood for the pledge. And we all stood for the anthem. We stood for patriotic moments because that's what we do. Trump calls them out, and one team after another is now coming along to seeing the fans are not with you on this issue.
And DirecTV is giving their Sunday ticket package people a refund.
Well, money
a message.
talks.
Money
Money talks. If you want to be heard, and I say this to my friends who give money to their colleges. Now, a lot of colleges have these huge endowments, so they're insulated from any criticism. Like Harvard has billions and billions of dollars. Other schools have a huge endowment, so you can't get very far.
Right.
Can't get all that far with the colleges. That's the problem of getting too big, whether it's a big corporation or big government or big college. You don't have an effect. The little person doesn't have an effect. But in this stuff, the little people are the sport.
100%.
They're the sport. And so Trump, I just love this. I woke up at 3 a.m. I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers. No, we're standing for We're standing for unity. You know what you're standing for, Aaron? You're standing for your pocketbook. Let's be honest. You're standing there because the fans called you out, and they're standing there and they're looking you in and saying, guess what? You do this, we're not coming to your stupid games anymore.
They got it wrong.
Just say we got it wrong.
The tipping point was, James, who was the Pittsburgh player who's the former Army Ranger?
Villanueva.
Villanueva.
He didn't follow the team lead.
And then he felt the need to apologize for coming out of
his jersey was the number one seller on NFL.com.
Yeah, and you know how they're walking all over Kaepernick.
Good.
And the whole thing is just ridiculous. So Aaron Rodgers from the Packers, I don't know him from Adam, but he's trying to kind of split the issue here. Let's listen.
What did you think about how the national anthem thing went?
The messaging of this, unfortunately, needs to continue to be redirected, I think. It's never been about
redirected.
the
To your
national anthem.
pocketbook.
It's never been about the military. We're all patriotic in the locker room. We love our troops. This is about something bigger than that. An invitation
What's that about?
to show unity in the face of
what? What?
some divisiveness from the top in this country.
Oh, he's going after Trump. Divisiveness from the top. See, I think he's sticking his big size 14-foot right into his mouth. That's what I think Aaron Rodgers is doing. 855-40-LAURA. Divisiveness from the top. Barack Obama was the most divisive president in my lifetime. Now, I know the left holds him up as an icon, but if you're a Christian conservative, if you're a woman and you voted for Trump, he has got his wife out there now trashing you. Saying you only do things because people tell you to do it, i.e. you're stupid. You didn't go to Harvard and Columbia and all these schools. You're stupid because you voted for Trump, says Michelle. Remember, she's out of the bubble now of the White House. Remember, she used to call it the bubble? Oh, it was so hard to be in the bubble. Speaking of Tom Price's private jet flights, the HHS secretary, I told my staff over at Life Set, I want to see the list of the flights that Michelle and the kids took on spring break on the government aircraft. Okay? Because I talked about that for 8 years.
Or worse, the Saudi Kingdom family 747 that flew them to Aspen every year for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that. Okay, so don't give me the most divisive Aaron Rodgers. And then Aaron Rodgers so he's trying to, maybe he wants, you know what I was also thinking about with Rodgers?
Such big thinkers.
Oh, yeah, he's such a big intellect. You know, I was also thinking with Aaron Rodgers, he's probably going, I need my O-line with me on this. He's like, I need my O-line. I don't have my O-line. I'm just going to sack. The offensive line is like, You better be speaking up for us, dude.
They don't play.
They don't even know what they're
playing in Green Bay. Those fans,
I'm telling you what, this is not a good deal for them. They are still not getting it. This is what he said about sports mixing with politics. And after you hear this, we'll take a break. I don't want to take up this whole segment on this, but I do want to hear from you. Do you agree with Aaron Rodgers? I guess he fancies himself Jackie Robinson now in the football in the football sport. He's Jackie Robinson. He's so brave.
As much as some people want us to just shut up and play football.
Yeah, exactly.
And keep the politics to the politics. Sports and politics have always intersected, and if we can help continue a conversation.
What conversation?
Through a demonstration of unity like tonight, I think that's a good thing.
What conversation does Aaron Rodgers want to have? Are we going to talk about affirmative action in the NFL? I don't think the NFL is diverse enough. Are we going to have affirmative action? Which conversation are we going to have?
I got nothing.
Are we going to have conversation about crime rates in Chicago, Detroit, fatherlessness? Are we going to have a conversation about how the economic growth during the last 8 years pre-Trump was so anemic that we had no wage increases and wages were effectively the same rate as they were in 1999? We're going to talk about that, Aaron? What are you going to talk about? You can talk about who washes your Bentley in the weekends? What the heck? What are we going to talk? I don't know if he has a Bentley, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, come on. What are you sitting around are you reading Foreign Affairs on the weekend? He says, well, I think I'm going to flip the pages of Commentary magazine this weekend and talk about how the automation and robotics are going to change the American workforce. We need to have a conversation about he's not having a conversation. He's having second thoughts about his team and all of the people pushing this racial division when we should be pushing patriotism. The country is more diverse than it's ever been. We're just reading in the Washington Post when I was down in the gym. See, I go down to the gym in my building. I never do any workout. I just read the paper, and then I'm like, okay, 45 minutes, what a waste of time. Sitting on the bench. I'm like supposed to be lifting a few weights. Sitting on the bench, reading the paper, getting enraged. What?
You don't read it while you're on the bike?
No, because the bike is a recumbent. Recumbent bikes are a joke. They don't even give you any. So anyway, the bottom line is I didn't do any exercise. But I'm getting exorcised about what the Washington Post is saying about Prince William County, Virginia. Yeah. Used to be a rural farming community. Yep. Conservative, rib rock conservative. Guess what happened to Prince William County, 30 miles north of D.C.? What happened? It's called uncontrolled illegal immigration and immigration. So what was a rural farming community is now an exurb, I hate that word, exurb of D.C., moving more blue, more heavily Islamic, of course Hispanic. I don't really care about that, but I do care about the fact that nobody voted for illegal immigration, right. And that's just changing the whole landscape of the state. Yep. And by the way, they want that to happen all over the place. In Virginia, they want it to happen in Texas, want it to happen in North Carolina, and it is happening. Colorado. So I'm thinking about, there's a lot of stuff that's happened to this country that I haven't liked, that my listeners haven't liked. But guess what? When we hear that anthem played, we all stop what we're doing. And we all rise to our feet. And if you're worth your salt as an American, you take the hat off your head. You put your hand over your heart, take the smirk off your face. By the way, I saw too many smirks last night and sullen faces. And you thank God that you're living in the greatest country in the face of the earth. That's what I do. And I think of all the men and women who died and who were struggling for their last breaths for freedom, when the rest of us were sleeping cozy in our beds at night and the others were playing on a football field making millions of dollars. I'm just tired. I'm tired of this. I'm ranting on a Friday, but you know something? Aaron Rodgers, all these people, I'm not watching this weekend. I'm not spending a penny on any NFL goods or merchandise or tickets. I'm done for the season. Maybe next season I'll feel differently. I have no interest in watching the games. I just don't. So it's really killed the love of football for me, for NFL. No
Brady jersey for you this week.
Oh, my God. My kids do have Brady jerseys. And I can't remember who sent them to me as a joke, but I do have Brady jerseys. But so I'm going to college football. College football's where it's at. Although someone told me up in Maine, a friend of mine in Maine said high school soccer players were kneeling before their soccer game, and he said the kids that were doing it were refugees. Yeah. So they're grateful for they're here, right?
That doesn't happen in Central New York.
Yeah, no, that doesn't happen in Skinny Atlas. All right, 855-40-LAURA. We have a lot to get to. They're already hazing Justice Gorsuch. I'll tell you about what happened yesterday in New York. I was there with Judge Ralph K. Winter, my old appellate court judge, who was honored. And 5 Supreme Court justices showed up for this amazing tribute to him. At 5. It was. I got teared up. I mean, it was wild to be down there at the site of the old Trade Center towers and the courthouse, and remembering all those days I used to walk through those buildings and going back to the courtroom again and seeing him. It was very emotional for me and for everybody there. What a phenomenal judge. The way judges should be. They're impartial referees. They're not political animals. All right, we'll take a break. Your reaction? Aaron Rodgers says politics and sports always intersect. Do you want them to?
We had a meeting after practice, and the guys decided to stand as a team. But they wanted a statement just kind of stating, what they were doing last Saturday and what we're doing as a team moving forward. I think the statement speaks to their initial intent of what they wanted to get accomplished in the past and on Sunday. So I'm proud of the guys. Moving forward, it's about our team playing football. That's what it's really about.
That's Vance Joseph, the head coach of the Broncos. Well, they can say anything they want. The truth is, the NFL got caught with egg on its face. And, the president was right. And, looking back on this, I'm glad he spoke out. I'm glad he called them out on this. And it was an uncomfortable few days, but I think the people have spoken loud and clear. Robin in Arizona on line 1. Green Bay's Aaron Rodgers tried to still convince everybody that politics is always going to be part of sports. Robin, go ahead.
Laura, you are my hero, for one. I listen to you every day driving to work.
Thanks.
And I've been a Packers, a Vikings, and an Arizona Cardinals fan for about 45 years. I grew up watching football, and I'm done. They can apologize, but I consider it you're grounded, and you can be grounded for 2 weeks, you can be grounded for 2 months. The fans are going to decide. They were disrespectful. The coaches are disrespectful. And having military in my family, you have disrespected my family.
Yeah, they didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. And it's going to continue to reverberate unless it's really set right. I don't know if it can be set right this season. Maybe. Coming up, Dershowitz. You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Trump is in the crosshairs, no doubt about it, as Paul Manafort is expected, perhaps, to be indicted. Has been told as much, according to reports. Former campaign manager for Donald Trump. He has been cooperative with the feds from the beginning, but then suddenly they showed up and did a raid on his home when he was there. It's kind of an unusual way they went about that. But the Mueller team is filled with a lot of legal eagles. And I said before the break that it was a very nostalgic day for me yesterday in Lower Manhattan in Foley Square at the federal courthouse, because one of the great judges of the Second Circuit, my old boss, Ralph Winter, who frankly should have been put on the Supreme Court in 1982, but that's neither here nor there. But he was honored, got the Edward Devitt Award, and 5 Supreme Court justices showed up. All of them spoke. Sotomayor, Kagan, Ginsburg, Kennedy, and Thomas. They all showed up for Judge Winter. It was really incredibly moving, powerful event, and almost all of his law clerks. I mean, it was just incredible. Joining us now, Alan Dershowitz. Of course, his book Trumped Up. I got one of the first copies of it. I got my hands on it back in late August, and of course, he's been at the forefront of this First Amendment conversation, what's happening on college campuses, and also on the criminalization of politics in the United States and what that does to free expression and political debate. And he joins us now. Professor, good to talk to you. How you doing?
Well, thanks so much. I wish I knew about the event for Judge Winter. We were classmates at Yale Law School. We took a couple of classes together, even though I think he was a year or two ahead of me. He was off the charts brilliant back even then, and I've argued several cases in front of him when he was sitting on the Second Circuit, and it was always like an academic seminar, like a classroom with a great professor. He never minced words. He'd tell you exactly where he stood. He didn't try to hide the ball. He was, more conservative than I am, and ruled against me as often as he ruled in favor of me. But he is a great judge, and I wish I could have been there.
It was great. It was
the honor.
Yeah.
Of course, Justice Scalia would have been there too.
Oh, absolutely.
I know Justice Scalia was a great admirer.
Professor, we have a lousy connection with you, which is, I'm sure, our fault. So we're going to either see if we can reconnect with you and check that, or but we're missing every other word of what you're saying. So we need to make sure that's fixed. Okay, so we'll ring you right back and get that better. So we're going to talk about that. But it's weird when you go back and you think, oh my gosh, it's 25 years ago, and 25 years seems a blink, which is what it was like yesterday for me in New York. I mean, of course, the World Trade Center buildings are gone. The Vista Hotel where I used to stay all the time when we were in session is gone. Of course, that's just been rebuilt. Lower Manhattan looks completely different, but Foley Square is still Foley Square, and it's a courthouse still the courthouse, and courtroom still the courtroom. But it was nice to actually hear all the justices speak about a Republican nominee, appointee to the Federal Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. And they all spoke about his judging professionalism, his character, the way that he teaches his students still, when he taught at Yale, he taught corporations, taught corporate securities law. And in a moment where everything seems divided, it's really, really nice to hear, liberals like Sotomayor or Kagan just gush on about a Republican judge like Judge Winter. So it was, I don't know, it took me back to kind of a slightly simpler time in Manhattan. So I was just glad for that. So we're going to reconnect with Alan Dershowitz in just a moment here on the Laura Ingraham Show. There's a piece in the Wall Street Journal called "Hazing Justice Gorsuch" that I'm going to get to about what the left is trying to do to him before he's even heard his first case for this term. We're back with Alan Dershowitz. Professor, I hope we have a better connection with you now. Do we? Yes?
I hope so.
Yes.
I'm on my way to Martha's Vineyard.
Oh, God.
So I'm in a taxi cab, but always want to talk to you. And again, congratulations to Judge Winter for a life well lived and a judicial career well served.
Yeah, well, he was great. So, by the way, I have tweeted and we're Facebooking photos of you and me from late August when we met for a little quick bite to eat with all your. Were your liberal friends horrified by me, or were they okay after that little sojourn? Were they okay? They seemed nice.
It just confirmed their view that I had joined the dark side. Bringing you to the porch with your wonderful children. I have to tell you, your children help very much.
Oh, good.
It's hard to not like you when you're there with your kids.
Oh, good. I'm just going to have to bring them everywhere now. I'm going to have to bring them on the set of my new Fox show as well. Let's talk let's talk about what's happening now. As far as we're seeing on this Mueller investigation, there's these moments of quiet, but that usually means they're getting the grand jury ramped up to hear more testimony. We now know that people like Sean Spicer have attorneys, that Mike Pence's lawyer has agreed to be interviewed, which I guess that's kind of an interesting development. We find out about how he was volunteering in the summer about that. What can we expect in the coming weeks, do you think, from Mueller, given what we're hearing, the dribs and drabs?
Well, first of all, it was a terrible mistake for the government to appoint a special counsel here. This means that the American public doesn't get to hear anything about the Russian connection until years from now, because everything happens behind the closed doors of grand jury unless it's leaked. But I have to tell you, a lot of the people who are getting subpoenas and getting lawyers are probably thinking to themselves, why did President Trump fire Comey? If he hadn't fired Comey, would all of this be going on today? So, look, I think it's a mistake to have appointed Mueller, but I have to tell you, I do think that there are people who are going to say that part of the responsibility, at least for that, was the firing of Comey. And there are going to be some angry former Trump people who are being subpoenaed and who may want to save themselves by testifying against the man who they perceive as having created their problem. Whether they're right or wrong, I don't know, but that's going to be their perception.
And the question about going back to Comey, there's two different questions about that. Whether Donald Trump fired Comey, whether it was politically smart to do, number one. Number two, whether he was within his right as chief executive officer of the United States to do it. And they're two different questions, correct?
The second one's he was within his rights. It's not an obstruction of justice. Clearly, it can't be criminal for a president to exercise his constitutional authority. We don't probe the motives of president. We don't try to psychoanalyze them. He did an act which was completely authorized. My source for that is Comey. When he testified in front of Congress, he said unequivocally the president had the right to fire me, and the president had the right to tell me who to investigate, who not to investigate. But having fired him, I think it put the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General into the position of saying, well, we really, for the public, maybe have to appoint a special counsel. And that's where the problems for the Trump administration really got worse and worse and worse. Just imagine how different it would be if Comey were the head of the FBI. With a lot of pressure on him, nobody liked him. The Democrats didn't like him.
I never would have fired him.
Yep. Everybody thought he spoke too much. So he'd been a wounded warrior. And I don't think he'd be doing as much of this as is now being done by his clean successor who comes in with no baggage and can do whatever he wants and can't be fired. Because the president gets to do this once. He can't do it again a second time. If he were to fire Mueller now, he'd really be at risk of congressional backlash.
No, he's not going to fire. He's not going to fire Mueller. That's not going to happen. No. One question, and then we'll let you go because I know you're in the car. Two more questions. Number one, the Congress is trying to pass. I should say, certain members of Congress are trying to pass these. There are two different statutes which would further insulate Mueller, again, putting aside whether it would be politically smart for the president to fire him, make it more difficult for the president to fire Mueller from this investigation. Tom Tillis and Lindsey Graham are both pushing this legislation. Cruz and Ted Cruz and Mike Lee are both saying, well, how is this constitutional? How do we dictate what the executive does in the executive branch as far as hiring and firing? How does that come down?
I'm generally on the side of Lee and Cruz, both of whom are superb lawyers, and Scalia, who, of course, wrote the dissenting opinion in that case. And I think Scalia's views have come to be accepted now, even though it was a 7-1 decision. But I think the Supreme Court might very well uphold such a statute. So there's an enormous difference between what the Supreme Court says and what the right result is. I do think separation of powers makes it difficult for Congress to limit the power of the president to hire and fire at his will. Of course, that was the grounds for the first impeachment in our history of President Johnson, and the Supreme Court, following the Johnson impeachment, ruled that the president had the authority to fire members of the cabinet, and Congress couldn't put constraints on that. So it's an uncertain area of the law. Also, the president has to sign the bill for it to become law.
Right.
And the president may not want to fire Mueller, but he may not sign the bill. He may veto it.
No one wants.
Then the question is, do you have a veto-proof majority?
No one wants to erode their own Article 1 power. If the president just wants to say, okay, you take more of my presidential power from you. Congress wants its own power preserved, usually, and the executive branch wants its power to be preserved. So the idea that Trump would sign on to it. Can we just ask you one quick question? We still have a lousy connection with you. I can't do cell phones in cars anymore. I've decided. I just can't hear you well enough. And the audience will be frustrated with me. So just quickly, very quickly, this content-based discrimination suit you might file against Berkeley. Can you give us a very brief synopsis of that, and then where that might go?
Sure. Student groups invited me to speak at Berkeley about the Middle East. Berkeley said I couldn't do it because they have a rule saying if you're high profile, you need to give them 8 weeks' notice, but there's an exception. If you're invited by a department, you don't have to. All the anti-Israel and radical left people are invited by departments. The pro-Israel conservatives are never invited by departments. So the effect of the rule is content discrimination. And if a department refuses to invite me, or if the school doesn't rescind its rule, I'm going to sue them, and we're going to win that case because it's a public university, and they can't engage in content discrimination, the effect of which is pro-Israel speakers don't get to speak, anti-Israel speakers get to speak, radical leftists get to speak, conservatives and centrists don't get to speak. A public university can't have that kind of a rule.
Well, and I really hope you pursue this, because I think it's time the federal courts really kind of cleared any remaining ambiguity up about this, and there's always ambiguity if you want to find it. Professor Alan Dershowitz, check out Twitter. You're going to love our photos, and also on Facebook. But I'll send them too if you don't already. But that was really fun. I really enjoyed seeing you in August.
It was fun, and I gave you a copy of my book, Trumped Up, and I have a picture of you reading the book, so you can never deny it again.
No, I'm happy. I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun, and give my best to your family, and we hope to talk to you real soon. Alan Dershowitz here on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. We have a lot more to get to on your healthy radio addiction. They are trying to Katrinize Trump over Puerto Rico. Is that fair? Saying that Puerto Rico is now Donald Trump's Katrina. They will not stop until they remove him from office. By hook or by crook, don't go away.
I hear voices. I hear voices like...
Big money is poured in to organizations like Media Matters. Do you know they threatened you and me if we did this segment tonight?
No, they
Media Matters.
They threatened me
us
for just having allowing you to have a voice.
Just to have the segment.
Just to have the segment.
We were threatened.
Yes, we were.
Because these totalitarians want to wipe out any speech with which they disagree.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. There's some interesting developments on the ratings front over at Fox. And I'm not saying this just because I'm about to join the Fox primetime lineup. I'm saying this because it's just fascinating that Sean Hannity this week has numbers, meaning number of people tuned in to his show at 9 p.m. on Fox News. He has numbers that are beating Megyn Kelly on network television. So Megyn has this show called Megyn Kelly Today at 9 o'clock, and it's had somewhat of a rocky start. She's trying to make a transition from a hard edge kind of political anchor to do profiles on the Kardashians and interview the Menendez brothers. That's what she's doing. But Hannity's not only beating Rachel Maddow handily, Hannity's beating Megyn Kelly, who's on network television. When you just compare ratings in different day parts, but it's kind of a funny factoid. There's a picture of a man kneeling during taps at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and of course, at the Arlington National Cemetery, and it's sparking outrage online and across the country. Infuriating. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier now is a place to protest? Congratulations, NFL. You are listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction, the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. The president about to speak on tax reform. We'll go to that live for you. Joining us now, I'm delighted he's with us, my old friend, CNBC senior contributor Larry Kudlow, author, columnist, economic analyst, and of course we see this 3.1% GDP from the second quarter. That is a number we're really happy to see. And Donald Trump's point yesterday is we do tax simplification and rate simplification, some rate cuts, and guess what? We'll see even more explosive growth and some wage growth on top of it. Larry Kudlow joins us now. Larry, great to talk to you. How you doing, my friend?
Thank you, Laura. Terrific, and 1,000 congrats on your new TV show.
Thank you so much. We're going to have a lot of fun. And so you can't really come on, right? Because you work for CNBC. So
sometime I might get a papal dispensation. You never know.
Well, it'd be more fun on my show than any of those other shows. I can tell you that. Well, Larry,
you're probably right.
Yeah, I've been having you on for like 20 years, Larry, on radio and TV. So I mean, we have a long history, my friend. Oh my goodness. Speaking of dispensation, is the president going to get any dispensation from Congress? It looks like they're trying to get on the same page with the House and the White House and the Senate on some general agreement on how this tax reform will look. What's your sense thus far? And then I have some specific questions or concerns I want to raise.
Well, look, at this point, it looks a lot better than the healthcare stuff did. I mean, to this day, I don't really know what the Republican congressional healthcare policy is, and a lot of people around the country didn't know either. GOP doesn't do well on healthcare. GOP does do very well on tax cuts, however. And, I think you've got the makings of a pretty good consensus, with the White House meeting with the Senate and the House. Kevin Brady is really a spark plug in all this, and so is Steve Mnuchin. So I'm just saying, I'm rather optimistic at the moment. There's a question of timing, how fast can they get this done? But I think they got a good head start in all of the aspects of this tax plan.
Here's the thing about what I'm hearing that I'm not wild about. I don't like it when Republicans give credence to this left-wing narrative that includes, of course, the soak the rich mentality, where the top rate won't be touched. In fact, it looks like the upper income earners will probably pay a little more in taxes. But they're not going to you're not going to bring down rates for the upper income earners. They're going to give relief to the LLC, the S Corp folks, which will be helpful, but they'll remove most all business deductions except for heavy equipment over the next 5 years. So the big expensing you can do, but that's only for 5 years. But I just think they're buying into this. Oh, well, you can't cut taxes for the rich. And I'm not saying this just because I'm in the upper income bracket. I think it's better policy. Take more money out of Washington.
Of course it's better. And, it's funny. All this fanatical coverage by a lot of the big media organizations about the rich. You know, the bulk of this whole tax plan, probably 80% of the revenues and so forth, are on the business side. It's not about cutting the top end. And by the way, what's wrong with wealthy people? Why shouldn't they have incentives? Why shouldn't we promote success instead of punishing success? You know, Obama waged war on business. Obama waged war on successful people. Trump is trying to stop that. And I just think it's just I guess it's predictable, but it's not a big part of this story. Look, on the original notes here, and this all may get changed in committee, the top rate goes from 39.6 to 35. Now, there is another possibility. They haven't ruled out the possibility that there might be another tax bracket, a fourth bracket that would raise it.
Above $1 million, right? It's above $1 million. Then there'd be a surcharge on certain either 1.5 or $1 million.
It could be. I mean, we don't know. You may be right. The point is, let's not do it. Let's not do it. Republicans should not, kowtow to this Democratic class warfare stuff that didn't work in the last election. Doesn't work in almost all elections. Just don't go there. I mean, the key parts here that are going to raise the growth rate of the economy to 3 to 4%. The key parts here, you and I have talked about this a lot. Boom, boom, boom. Bring the foreign cash home. That's the repatriation. Second, drop the corporate tax rate from 35 to 20. Trump wanted 15, so did I. But 35 to 20 is pretty good. And expense, really unlimited expensing for the first 5 years, but I'll bet you that gets extended forever. And the other thing on the individual side is doubling the standard deduction, which goes directly to middle and lower income and lower middle income individuals and families. That simplifies the system. Mm-hmm. That takes out the lower rate. They'll never even pay the 12% rate. They won't need all these deductions, and it's a welcome increase in cash in their pockets. You know what Reagan used to call take-home pay. So to me, the standard deduction and the business stuff is so key. And, waging war against rich people is just typical Washington nonsense.
Right, and I just think when they say, well, the rich are either going to pay a little more or they're going to get no rate cut at all because they're going to get rid of the state and local tax deduction. That's a big bone of contention for a lot of people. So you get rid of that. You keep the charitable in the home and I guess the child. But other than that, most people will be able to fill out their taxes on one sheet, which is that's great. I mean, that disempowers Washington. That's very, very positive. I'm just always concerned, Larry, that the Republicans always start by giving leverage to the Democrats. You start from a really clear, tough position, and then you advocate from a position of strength. You don't cede territory right off the bat before we've even gotten going.
Well, you're right. Basically, that's what Trump tried to do with the corporate tax rate. He knew what he was doing. I mean, he's the last guy in Washington that wants a 15% corporate rate, except when I take the Acela down to Washington. Then there are two of us. Maybe Steve Moore will make
maybe you and Steve and me. That's about it.
Yeah, and a few other hardcore. That's correct.
Not many.
But I'm just going to bet that Trump is, number one, going to play a really strong role in this negotiations. Really strong. Having spent the time we spent on campaign tax cuts, oddly enough, this is the funniest part. The product that they've outlined the other day is very much like our original campaign tax cut, and I wish they just put that up in January and passed the whole thing. But putting that aside, you are right. The GOP cannot be mau-maued by the Democrats on this top-rate rich people stuff, and I think Trump will be a very hard bargainer. He's good at this. And in some ways, he held out for 15% in the corporate rate because he knew darn well there were whispers about 25 and 28, and some of them coming from his own White House staff, unfortunately. So I think this is going to come down to Donald J. Trump, and I'm looking for him to be as tough as nails. And the stakes are really high, the political stakes and the economic stakes.
Larry, the Reagan tax cut brought it down from a maximum rate of 70 to 28. Remember that one? That was nice.
I was there.
Yeah, that was great.
That was the best, absolutely. I mean, now, that's a tax cut for rich people.
That's a real tax cut.
And by the way, the economy exploded. I mean, in those days, the individual rates were more important than the business rates because the business rates were still competitive with the rest of the world. It was the income tax rates and the top several income. Look, I was so happy. In Trump's speech the other day, he mentioned for the first time the John F. Kennedy tax cuts, which is the subject of my book, JFK and the Reagan Revolution. Now, we have been trying to get him to use JFK's example.
Nice.
And finally it happened, and really tears were streaming down my cheeks in happiness that he finally put this thing on. So I'm just saying, let's get on with it, all right? Let's get on with it. Let's stop bickering and being mad. Democrats don't have a card to play, Laura, because you got 3 sitting vulnerable Democrats, completely unlike the votes of health care. You got Heitkamp in wherever it is, North Dakota. You got Manchin in West Virginia. You got Donnelly in Indiana. You might even have McCaskill, who knows, from Missouri. So that gives the GOP some spare votes, and they don't have to be mouthed by, some of their own people. I'll not name the names at the moment. And this thing can go. You got about 9 weeks, 10 weeks till the legislative calendar ends. They can do this, and it will be huge.
Oh my gosh! The 3.1%. I think that growth is partly based on the fact that they thought that taxes would probably already be done by now, or at least healthcare would be done. But still, that's a strong growth number, and hadn't had quarterly growth that strong in a few years. And of course, it's on page 3 of the New York Times because they don't want to give him any credit on that.
You got guys like former Senator Phil Graham and his longtime colleague Mike Solon, who are cranking out research about the positive growth impacts of both the Kennedy and the Reagan tax cuts. I mean, really good, hard research, Laura, facts and figures from good sources. And folks should, get that, and they will see that, lower marginal tax rates do create incentives. And we will not punish successful people. We will reward them. And this will work. And Mnuchin, can I just say Mnuchin, right, who people don't know, but I know him very well from the campaign. Mnuchin is out there, again, today in the Wall Street Journal, a gigantic story. He's betting on 3% economic growth, which gives you a couple of $1 trillion in extra revenues, which I call the mother of all pay-fors.
Saving Puerto Rico could cost that much, $1 trillion. I mean, the whole island's gone. So we spend $135 billion, it turns out, in services provided to illegal immigrants every year. That study just came out, $135 billion, contrary to everyone says. They pay more in taxes and they get in benefits. Just a total lie. And so that's money that's money spent in that way. No one voted for that. And now we have all these crises. We need to help the people in Puerto Rico. And people say we're out of money. Well, we got to have growth to prepare for these types of emergencies.
Right.
You need growth.
So right. That is such a key point. A strong, growing economy can help these emergencies. A weak economy cannot. By the way, let me just add to that internationally. Reagan always said this: if you're strong at home, you're strong abroad. By the way, JFK said the same thing 50 years ago. If you're strong at home, you're strong abroad. So if you take Trump's UN speech, which I thought was terrific, and you build on that a pro-growth tax reform policy, you are going to propel him and the USA into the kind of leadership and prominence we have not seen in at least 8 years.
Larry Kudlow.
That's the stakes. Stakes are so high.
No. It's got to happen. They've already blown it on health care, which was an absolute disgrace, and they cannot blow it on this tax reform. Can't do it. Larry Kudlow, it is always so great to talk to you, an old friend of this program. A young old friend of this program, always useful. We never age, Larry. That's a great thing about you and I. We say we're mirthful, youthful, laughing through all the, what?
These things, Laura, they're just numbers.
Yeah, they are. We got people hurting out there. We gotta get them help when we can help them and grow this economy. It has to be done. Larry Kudlow, stay with us. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about the sports mania with parents and the quest for the elite athletes. It was Newsweek a couple weeks ago talked about this. We've addressed this before, but it's now actually gotten much worse than it was. Even when I just started getting into the world of sports and raising my kids 5 years ago, it's worse than it was 5 years ago. It's getting worse and worse. Now there are special camps for just certain positions in certain sports. So if you want to go to goalie camp for lacrosse, you can specialize in that.
That's insane.
Oh yeah, no. It's much worse, and these parents pay as much as $100 an hour for a one-on-one sports coaching or tutorial, or the desperate desire of these parents to get their kids into Division I schools or to get them into Ivy League schools as athletes, and what they'll do to their family life in order to achieve that. That's where I kind of draw the line. Sometimes I'm successful at it and sometimes I'm not. I try to draw the line. Sports on Sundays. Kids' sports on Sundays. Again, it's just me. I mean, it's the way I was raised, or old-fashioned. I really don't like these kids' sports on Sundays. I think Sundays should be, well, for us it's Mass. We go to Mass and we usually have breakfast afterward, or brunch, or whatever you call it. And that's our time.
Yeah, it's family time.
It's family time.
That's right.
I don't want to be in a car driving all over creation for a 7-year-old's soccer game, or a 9-year-old's baseball interminable game, or a lacrosse clinic in Gaithersburg, Maryland. That's, in my view, that's not the best way to spend our Sunday. Now, you all might have a different view on that, but I find it to be, it adds a level of stress to your family life. And you have so little time with your kids. You'll see, James, I'm looking back in the last 25 years from that judicial ceremony I went to yesterday for my appellate court judge. And I'm looking around the room. John Bolton was there. He clerked for Ralph Winter. Paul Mahoney was the dean at University of Virginia Law School. Ed Rollins was there. It was a wonderful event. But I look around like, could it really be 25 years since I was a clerk on the Second Circuit? And with your kids, it goes by even faster. So I make myself think this, but it just comes kind of naturally. I say, I don't know how many Sundays I'll have with them when they're little and they still want to be with me and they still want to spend time with me. And I really don't want that time to be spent running all over creation for kids' maniacal sports. I'm sorry. That's just where I am. 855-40-LAURA, what do you think about this? And maybe it's just I'm a stressed out mother, and maybe it's just too much for me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's great for other people. I have no idea, but I can just say what I believe. This is what I believe, and sometimes I'm not successful in cordoning off Sundays, but most of the time I am. This whole area is, it's like a lot of the metropolitan areas. It's crazy with kids' sports. And here's the good news: it's more likely than not, when your kid is really devoted to a sport, really devoted, that he or she will stay out of trouble. Now, that's not always. We know there's problems with drinking and drugs, and, we've had problems with lacrosse and football, basketball. But it's more likely that a young man or a young woman who's really dedicated in a real positive way to a sport, they don't have time to get involved in trouble. I think that's true. It was true for me in high school, junior high. I was just so busy. But it wasn't these traveling teams. I played for my high school team. And I played for the little rec league in town, but there was no travel team. That's just crazy, the travel teams. In my view, it's all too much. And it takes away from family time, makes people crazy, schedule out the wazoo. And, I hate to break it to you, but most of your kids are not going to be Division I athletes going to college and getting scholarships. It's not going to happen. And for the rare kid that you see who does have that natural talent, then it's probably a different story. But, it's pretty tough to balance it all. We're going to get to our guest in just a moment on this, who's played in the NFL, is examining this issue and how all these kneelers in the NFL and the protesters are affecting the young players from elementary school on up. We're seeing the elementary kids taking a knee. Oh, no, Patrick in Ohio, before we get to our guest. Patrick, go ahead, my friend.
Laura, I just completed my last 7 years of coaching my 14-year-old son in a travel league, and we try to keep, families a part of our organization, try to stay away from Sundays and weekends as best we could. We didn't schedule games on the Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July weekend. We wanted that to be family time.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. When I grew up, you played in the rec league. You got on your bike, you went to the park, played your game, and that was it.
That's
and
it.
I despise the fact that I had to put my son in a travel league, but that was the only way he can play competitively, and it's sad.
Yeah, you can't really compete. I find that with my kids. Like my son's just, Nico's little, but Dimitri's 9. I don't know how into sports he really is. He says he wants to play, but then he's out there, he's really fast. He's just not that aggressive. You can't teach that. You're either aggressive or you're not. I was really aggressive. I just wanted to win at everything all the time. So, and I don't know where I got that. It was since I was a little kid, since I was 3 or 4. That was the way I was. You can't teach that. You're either aggressive or you're not in a sport. And I'm just not going to, Dimitri, you've got to do this. We got to get you a coach. You're fast, so you need to be good at I want him to do what he loves when it comes to extracurricular activities. I mean, if he loves, maybe he wants to do some other thing. Maybe he wants to do computer coding. Maybe he wants to do, golfing, or maybe he wants to be on cross-country team. I don't know. But I don't think he's really all that competitive, at least right now. And I'm not going to force him to do that. I do not like the Sunday practices. I don't like the Sunday tournaments. I do not like the holiday tournaments. And that's a way of life, by the way, Patrick, for the lacrosse. They do these weekend tournaments, and then I was like, wait a second, that's Memorial Day weekend. Oh, sorry, that's when the tournament is. I don't like that. That means we can't do anything as a family except sit in a hot lacrosse field. So I don't like that. Ricky in Kentucky, then we're going to get to our guests. Ricky, go ahead.
Laura, hello. You mentioned the sports academies. I'm a high school football coach, and I'm seeing it more and more that these academies, you can't teach athleticism. However, these academies are telling parents that their kid has collegiate abilities and they have no athleticism. It's all about money, and they really do need to be exposed. Parents are spending a fortune sending their kids to these academies, and they can't teach them to be an athlete.
Yeah, so for the football academies that you're talking about, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a parent out there, and you know this parent. Your kid is kind of athletic, might have a decent build to play, defensive line or something. Maybe you think is fast and likes the sport, likes to watch the sport. So you play, you throw with your kid. Kid plays like in a midget football league, then plays with the higher ranked kids. But he's never going to play top football at a college. It is not going to happen. But you send him to Holy Cross camp, summer football camp, and what do you pay a week there, Ricky? You pay what, $3,000 bucks?
$100 an hour. Yeah,
oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hundreds of dollars an hour.
It's a big business.
It really is. It really is.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, Ricky, you got some good football down there in Kentucky, though. Is your team good this year?
We're decent. Yeah, we're pretty good.
Well,
pretty good.
You don't sound enthusiastic about that team. The team doesn't sound great to you.
Well, it's bad karma. It's bad karma. You have to be humble about it.
Yeah, but do you have a decent special teams? You have a decent quarterback? What's your deal there? Got a good quarterback?
We've won several state championships.
Okay, all right. Now he does now. Okay, all right. I got you. So now the Kentucky, you all are really wild about your basketball there. Kentucky is a basketball state in my view, but you got some great football. In Kentucky, Texas, California, of course, Alabama.
Alabama has a little football.
Alabama. Ricky, I appreciate it. I like hearing from the coaches. And the high school football coaches, those are the high school coaches.
They build men.
They build young men, and they teach you a lot about character. My high school field hockey coaches, basketball coach, softball coaches. I mean, those are some of my best memories in high school are playing sports. But it was high school. It wasn't travel team. I hate to say, we had 412 kids in my class, total class. I was the class athlete. I was the female. There's a female and male.
Sure.
DJ Patnod, God rest his soul, he died. It was horrible, of a brain aneurysm like a year ago. One of my close, wonderful person. He was the male athlete, and I was the female athlete. And I never played a single travel team.
Right.
And I played 3 sports and lettered them, and we were State champ, state
sport-
number one in the state. Field
played
hockey.
multiple sports throughout the year. You didn't specialize.
No. Debated politics with my liberal teachers, though, as senior years in current issues class. People would come up to me at reunion going, "Don't you remember when you took them on the death penalty?" I said, "I have no memory of that." Like, "Oh, yeah, you got into a huge fight with Professor Dahl or teacher Mr. Dahl or something."
Why is no one in the studio shocked
by
this at all?
I got into big fights, apparently, but I don't really recall those fights. Travis Dorsch, delighted he's on, a former NFL player, founding director of the Families and Sports Lab, Utah State University. He thinks it's very interesting that we're now spending $15 billion with a B dollars a year on the youth sports industry. He joins us now to talk about this, the effect of these players politicizing sports on the young kids. As my friend Travis in Maine said, there's a youth soccer league where 3 of the boys were nailing before the game. I don't even think they were playing the national anthem, but they decided to kneel as a protest. And
were they praying? Were they?
No, they weren't praying. If praying, they would have been thrown off the team if they were praying. Yeah, they didn't like that. Travis, good to talk to you. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm great. You know, what you're describing there about, riding your bike down to the field, it's like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. We don't see that anymore, these youth sport leagues, but
no.
It's an interesting business.
It is. Well, it's a big business. It's very profitable. There's a place in D.C. called Next Level, which is they print money at this place. It's a building, Travis, where they have maybe 2 floors, kind of an interesting little location. And the people who started this, they former lacrosse players. I can't remember what they did. It's huge business, Travis.
It's a warehouse behind an auto body
shop
that they got for nothing. They put turf down. It's so ridiculous.
And these poor kids are exhausted at the end of the day. They're studies and their mother dragging them in at 7:30 to do like goalie conditioning in the little gym they have. It's sick.
Your children did that.
They did that. They did it. DID. Okay, Travis. What does this do to kids? Is it good for kids because it keeps them out of trouble? Is it about the parents' psyche and the parents wanting the kids to do what maybe they did or wanted to do? What's going on here?
It's so interesting, and this is a conversation. We could spend an hour on this. There's so many layers to this, but there are these cottage industries popping up. I mean, we see these sport vacation complexes in Indiana and Texas and other places. I mean, there's recruiting services at every stop on the internet. There's, as you mentioned, these off-season trainers and strength and conditioning coaches, not for high school and college kids, but for 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. It's amazing to me the transformation I've seen, and I'm just in my mid-30s, but since the 80s and 90s when I was playing sport, it's just such a different landscape now. And I think, bless their hearts, parents are doing nothing but trying to keep up. They're trying to keep their heads above water with this and really trying to give their children every opportunity they can to succeed. So in some respects, I don't really fault the parents. It's almost this keeping up with the Joneses sort of.
What do you mean you don't defend? Hold on a second. What is that? Wait, I gotta. You don't. What is the kids' fault that their parents are dragging them along to like a soccer tournament in Ocean City, Maryland, on a 98-degree day in July? Not that I ever did that. And you can barely breathe in the humidity, and the other kids are crying in the back of the car because they just want to go to the beach, and you're like dying out in the field because your kid's going to be a Division I athlete when he's only 7 years old. I mean, who's this parent? The parents are desperate to fit in and be part of this mix, and I blame myself too. I think I'm part of the problem, frankly.
I agree 100%, and I think it's a structural problem. And I think parents see other parents and other families pursuing opportunities and pursuing activities, and they're trying to fit in. As you mentioned, they're trying to give their children every opportunity. Unfortunately, they're just a bit misinformed. I mean, you talked about the data in your lead-in, and I think it's important to know that we're talking about less than 2% of high school athletes that are going to go on and participate at the college Division I level, and that's just of high school athletes. So I think when folks are, and this we talked about this in the Time article a little bit that came out a few weeks ago, but when parents are dropping tens, if not in some cases even $100,000 or more into a child's sport participation, what's their motive? And that's my big question for parents, right? Because there's nothing inherently wrong with pursuing these travel teams. Yeah, it's about
the parents. What does
that investment do to your child's relationship with you and with sport, right? So does your child think that you are looking at this as an investment where they have to somehow repay you with a starting position or a scholarship or playing professionally? Or does the child understand that, hey, mom and dad are investing in my development as a person and as an athlete? I think that's the key demarcation.
You know what I also think, and I'm trying to figure out if there's any way I can do this, but I think it's almost impossible with my schedule. There is something about a parent who coaches their own kid's team, which is awesome, I think. And that's something I think I actually am good at. I'm not good at being like a tutorial on academics. I'm not good at that because I get really frustrated. Like, how do you not get this? Like, that's me. I have no patience. I'm the worst tutor. But on sports, I become so patient. There's something about sports. It's just natural for me. I'm really patient. I teach them how to do it, whether it's skiing or tennis or, so I'm not a great soccer player, but I know how to, do the basics. But with a parent coach, that can be an impressive bond as long as, you don't go crazy and start yelling at people. But that's pretty cool to do that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that was sort of the foundation of these community sport leagues, right? You think about Little League participation, which, by the way, is down 20% since 2000, since the turn of the century. And you think about these local opportunities where you're playing for your best friend's dad or your best friend's mom, and you see them at school and they're there.
It's nice.
It becomes this continuity over time throughout the different sports across the different seasons. Absolutely, a sense of community. And there's a lot to be said for how that can build character and some of these other things that we think inherently come from sport.
So you were at Purdue, right? And you played a little bit with the Bengals.
I did.
And you're seeing this stuff play out in the take a knee, stay in the locker room, take a knee, lock arms, hug, kiss each other. We're all for unity. We're not protesting the military as the military's booing them. What do you make of all of this, and how does this affect the kids?
I tell you what, I'm not in these guys' shoes today, so I reserve the right for them to deal with this how they please. But if this was going on when I was playing, I'd be standing up with my hand over my heart and singing right along. I mean, I think it's to each their own, and I'm not gonna criticize people because I haven't walked them out on their shoes. But I think it's not helping the game, and I think the TV viewership is showing that. Social ramifications aside, I think people tune in and or go to the games on Sunday to sort of escape reality, and this is shoving reality right in their face. So I don't know. I think again, these players have walked a different path in life than I have, and they have a right to do what they're doing.
You're so sensitive and PC. I mean, walked a different shoes. And no one's walked in anyone's shoes. I mean, you're not a Hallmark greeting card. You're someone who had real experience in the NFL, and you're one of the top. You're the top sports psychologists, and Utah State's a fabulous school. And plus, you're an 8-time Ironman finisher, which means you're a total stud. That is awesome, by the way. And forget all the other stuff you've done, the Ironman thing. The Ironman people are a little nutty, though, right? I mean, you guys are a little crazy. I mean,
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. But I tell you what, you mentioned I played at Purdue, and one of the things I love about Purdue is they play a little spiel before each game, and it's called "I Am an American," and the entire student body and the entire crowd stands up and they repeat these verses, and it's very cool, and they do the flyovers and the flags and stuff. So, again, that's how I was raised.
Travis is a conservative, but he's working at a college campus, so he has to be careful what he says.
Right.
Okay,
run him out on a rant.
I'm teasing you, Travis. You're awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Laura Ingraham Show. On Facebook and lauraingraham.com, the book tour stops thus far will be posted. In the next hour, go on Facebook, lauraingraham.com, Billionaire at the Barricades. Get your copy.